Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim, Racha Kodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And salutations to Ha Ma'ah, my Rabbi Alat, and I said the 144,000, all right, in the Hebrew, Ma'ah, Rabbi Alat. Okay, the 144,000. Shalom to you. And quickly, I want to get into this lesson dealing with Terah, which is our forefather Abraham's father, and how him living in even Abram at the time, and Lot, as well as one, I believe one other of Abram's siblings dwelt in Ur the Chaldees, okay, dwelt amongst heathen, and actually Terah himself was an idol worshiper. But the Lord, He brought us up from amongst those idol worshippers to pretty much clean us up and have us be a separate people unto Himself. All right, and now this was when the Lord was dealing with that chosen line as far as individuals within that chosen line. Just how in the case of Abram, he was chosen from amongst that line to be the vessel that the Lord would call his friend. And in return, here we are here in captivity today. All right. And just how when we came out of ancient Egypt, we had to be cleaned up, given the law, statutes, commandments, to make us separate from the heathen that we were just amongst. Likewise, before we got into the land of Israel, it was the same thing. There was more cleaning that had to be done. Being that there were heathen in that land, and the Lord didn't want us being like unto those Canaanites and the Hamites that was in the land of Canaan. All right, that was later named the land of Israel. All right, so likewise, in today's times, one of the main things that our people do as Israelites is, they're heavy into idol worship. And a lot of them don't even really understand that things they do consist of, idol worship. All right. So that's why the Lord, and you even got Israelites, that know they're Israelites, practicing Israelites, so to say, that, participate in idol worship, whether they know it or not. Okay. So, we gotta be cleaned up again before we actually go into the Holy Land, which is why the Lord's going to put the law, statutes, commandments in our inward parts. And as the scriptures say, the Lord is going to have Israel pretty much go under the bond of the covenant, in the wilderness. But getting to it, this is Genesis 11 in verse 24. It says, "And Nahor lived 29 years, then begot Terah." Okay, so Nahor is the grandfather of Abram. Okay, and Terah is the father of Abram. "And Nahor lived after he begot Terah 119 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years, and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran." Okay, so you had Terah, or Abram's father. He lived in. He had sons, and he named one Abram, one Nahor, and one Haran. Okay. verse 27, it says, now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran begot Lot. Okay. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. Okay. Now, okay, verse 30, I'm going to keep reading. But Sarai was barren. She had no child. And Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came into Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years. And then Terah died in Haran. Okay, so on the way to actually venture into the land of Canaan, you had our forefather Terah that actually passed. But as you see, we did come from our forefathers, did dwell in Ur of the Chaldees. Okay. And all the idol worship stuff, that Abram was involved in. That was a result of Ur of the Chaldees and the many deities and gods that they worship there. Okay, but the Lord wanted to bring us from amongst that. So this is Joshua 24, and I'm gonna read 1. Joshua reviews Israel's history. Joshua 1:1. I'm going to read this in the NLT. It says, then Joshua summoned all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, including 3 elders, including their elders, leaders, judges, and officers. So they came and presented themselves to the Most High. Joshua said to the people, this is what the Lord, the power of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah and the father of Abram and Nahor, lived beyond the river, the Euphrates River, and they worshipped other gods. Okay? So our forefathers at one point in time lived in Ur of the Chaldees in Mesopotamia, and they worshipped other gods. Okay? So this is Joshua going into that history. But I took your ancestor Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him into the land of Canaan. I gave him my gave him many descendants through his son Isaac. Okay, so just going into that history, Joshua was breaking it down again that, even your forefathers going way back to Terah, the father Abraham and Nahor lived beyond Euphrates River and they worshipped other gods. So there was other gods that were being worshipped at that time, that the Most High had put the spirit on, Terah to get up out of there. And maybe Nahor, Haran, Terah's son, Abraham's brother, maybe his passing has something to do with them getting up out of there. Who knows? It doesn't say in the scriptures, but who knows? Okay. But verse 3 again, it says, but I took your ancestor Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him into the land of Canaan. I gave him many descendants through his son Isaac. Okay, which in the reincarnation we know that Isaac is Yahweh Shai. All right. So jumping down to verse 23. This is when, as you know, Joshua was making Israel, pretty much come up underneath that covenant. And this is in the NLT. It says, "All right then," Joshua said, "destroy the idols among you and turn your hearts to the Lord Yahweh, the power of Israel." The people said to Joshua, "We will serve Yahweh, our power. We will obey him alone." Okay. So, Jake, one thing that, so like, hold on, let me take a look at my notes real quick. One thing that Jake needed to stay away from, we as a people needed to stay away from was that idol worship, man. So here it is, the Lord jacked up the Canaanites, the Hamites that was in the land of Canaan. He jacked them up for the idol worship and detestable, abominable, wicked, filthy, iniquitous lifestyle that they had, the shit they were doing, the things they were worshiping. All right, the Lord didn't want us being mingled with that and falling into those wicked ways, man. All right, so that's why Joshua went through that history of, hey, the Lord, he brought us, or he brought your forefathers up out of that land because of all the idol worship, to bring us here to this land, so that way you don't, that influence isn't in this land. All right, so that's why Joshua had went through that history again, But let me read verse 14. I forgot to read verse 14. I'm going to read it in NLT. Joshua 24:14. It says, "So fear the Lord Yahweh and serve him wholeheartedly. Put away forever the idols your ancestors worshipped when they lived beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt. Serve Yahweh alone." So he actually mentioned ancient Egypt as well. So ancient Egypt and Ur of the Chaldees. Okay, there was idol worship going on in both of those land masses. Okay, now there's an important part to there's benefits pretty much to not being into idol worship. The Lord will actually protect you in a time of need. When idols is put away from the nation of Israel, and Jake is serving Yahweh Hashem Yahushua and him alone, when it's time to be protected, the Lord has no problem with stepping in and protecting us on the account of, us being obedient to his word, man. And this is an example here in the Judith, the 5th chapter of the Lord, protecting Jake when we're doing the right thing, protecting the nation of Israel when we're doing the right thing. However, when we're not, that's when the heathen have an advantage over us. Okay. So Judith the 5th chapter, and this is in the GNT. Okay, Judith from the Apocrypha. Judith 5:1, it says, When Holofernes, the Assyrian general, heard that the Israelites had prepared for war, blocked the mountain passes, fortified the mountaintops, and set up roadblocks in the plains, he boiled over with anger. He called together all the Moabite rulers, all the Ammonite generals, and all the governors of the region along the Mediterranean coast, and said unto them, Ye live in Canaan, so tell me about the people who live in the mountains. Which cities do they occupy? How large is their army? What is the source of their power and strength? Who is the king who leads their army? Who gave these, why have they alone of all the people in the west refused to come out and surrender to me? Then Achor, the leader of all the Ammonites, answered Holofernes, Sir, if you will be pleased, if you will please be so kind to listen to me, I will tell you the truth about these people who live in the mountains near your camp. I will not lie to you. All right, now he's about to go into the history of the Israelites. All right, and this is a heathen that's going into this Ammonite. It says these people are the descendants of some Babylonians. All right, and we had went into this at camp. Now that's the reason why I read that history of of Terah in the Ur of the Chaldees in ancient Babylon, because we actually our forefathers came from up underneath that, came from up under that melting pot of confusion. All right, because that's all Babylonian means is confusion. Okay, so even this heathen, this Ammonite, he understood and knew that history. All right, and he's about to break it down. Okay, it says, verse 6, these people are descendants of some Babylonians who abandoned the ways of their ancestors in order to worship the power of heaven. Finally, they were driven out of their land because they refused to worship their ancestors' gods. Then they fled to Mesopotamia, where they settled and lived for a long time. Okay? It says, afterward, their God told them to leave Mesopotamia and go to the land of Canaan, where they settled and became very rich in gold, silver, and livestock. Okay, so that's the history right there. All right, that's the history. It says later, when a famine struck all the land of Canaan, these Israelites, as they were later called, went down to Egypt and stayed there as long as there was enough food. While they were there, they became a large nation with so many people that they could not be counted. So the king of Egypt turned against them. He took advantage of them and put them to work making bricks. He oppressed them and made them slaves, but they prayed to their power, and he sent disasters that left the Egyptians helpless. When the Egyptians drove them out of the country, their God dried up the Red Sea in front of them, and then led them along the way of Sinai and Kadesh Barnea. The Israelites drove out all the people who lived in the southern part of Canaan, occupied the land of the Amorites, wiped out the people of Heshbon, crossed the Jordan River, and took possession of the entire mountain region. They drove out the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Shechemites, and all the Girgashites. The Israelites have now lived in these mountains for a long time. Their God hates wickedness, and as long as they did not sin against him, they prospered. And that was a point that I had mentioned. All right. When we as Israelites are doing the right thing, on one accord with Yahweh Shem Yahushai, hey, the Lord's with us. The Lord will be with us. Okay? The Lord will be with us when when the nation of Israel has put away, false idols and turned to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and these heathens knew that. Okay, the heathens knew that. But when they disobeyed him, they suffered heavy losses in many wars and were finally taken away as captives to a foreign country. The temple of their God was leveled, and their cities were occupied by their enemies. All right, and now that's exactly why you don't want to get into idol worship. Okay, worshiping anything outside of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, because that leaves you open for, the Lord kicking your ass. All right, and that's exactly what has happened to us as a nation, being that we came over here to America to serve slavery, to the Americas, should I say. It says, verse 19, it says, but now that they have returned to their power, they have come back home from the countries where they had been scattered. They have again taken possession of the city of Jerusalem, where the temple is, and have settled in the mountains that have remained uninhabited. Sir, if these people are now sinning against their power, even unknowingly, and if it can be sure that they are guilty of some offense, we can successfully attack them. But if they have not disobeyed the law of their power, then you should leave them alone, or he will defend them, and we will be disgraced before the whole world. When Achor had finished his speech, all the people standing around the tent began to protest. Holofernes' own senior officers, as well as the Moabites and those of the Mediterranean coast, demanded that Achor be put to death. Why should we be afraid of these Israelites, they asked. They are weak. They can't put up a strong defense. Let us go ahead, General Holofernes. Let your great army slack him. Your great army will slaughter them easily. All right. So that's some of the history of dealing with our forefather Terah, him, his sons, his grandson Lot. All right, his son Abram and Nahor, his sons Abram and Nahor. All right, getting up out of Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. Okay, and the purpose for that being all that idol worship. Now, like I had mentioned, when we as a nation are not given to idols and actually serving Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, hey, things go well with us. The Lord protects us. He's with us. But when we don't, serve the Lord, and when we are given to idols and things of that nature as a nation, that's when we find ourselves stuck in captivity, calling upon the name of the Lord in hopes of being delivered, But in today's time, man, you got a lot of Israelites that are stuck on worshiping these idols. That's gonna get their ass in trouble, man. You got like I mentioned, Israelites that know they're Israelites that are heavy into worshiping these idols. Okay, inadvertently, directly. Okay, making certain leaders of these Israelite groups, making them demigods. That's you got a whole live idol. You know what I'm saying? The Lord ain't with that, man. But the time is coming where the Lord is going to expressly demonstrate the fact that he ain't dealing with idol worship, which is why ultimately America is going to be destroyed. But I just want to bring that history out of our forefathers coming out of the land of Ur, the Chaldees, and here in Judith the 5th chapter, when it mentions the Babylonians, that it mentioned the Israelites being Babylonians. That's simply because we actually dwelt in Ur of the Chaldees in times past. But Abrazazad, I know that was all over the place, but Lord willing, that was an edifying lesson. Until next time, I say shalom.